Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today on the channel, I'm going to feature a few albums I've picked up over the past few months. A handful of albums, should I say. And a few treats and a few surprises. So I'm going to start off here with a box set I bought that I saw like literally over 30 years ago and thought, wow, that'd be cool to have in my collection. But back then, box sets were a little pricey. But I found this online for $20 in mint condition. And it's the Back to Mono box set, Phil Spector. God, what a treasure of amazing early 60s singles. There's something about that pre-British invasion stuff, that American music that I really, really love. It just has a vibe. And I mean, when you look at these song selections, right? I mean, To Know Him Is to Love Him, Uptown, He's a Rebel, Why Do Lovers Break Each Other's Hearts, Hold Me Tight, Little Boy, Be My Baby, Then He Kissed Me. Just an incredible collection. And then what I love about this too is that it comes with this incredible book, pretty hefty book here of just great essays on the recordings and the artists and the songwriters. Just fantastic stuff. Really cool. And then you've got 3 CDs packed to the max right here of just all those great early 60s Phil Spector produced singles. And then you have the Christmas CD as well, A Christmas Gift for You, which is a lot of people regard as one of the greatest Christmas albums of all time. So just in time for the holiday season. So I'm really, really happy about this pickup here. Great stuff, and really didn't cost that much. So Phil Spector, the Back to Mono 58 to 1964 box set. Then I picked up a couple of Keith Jarrett albums as well, jazz pianist Keith Jarrett. This is an album that I had a cassette years ago from 1978 called My Song. And the cassette broke. I haven't had it for years. And my sister was getting rid of a few of her albums. I'm like, I'll gladly take these. And I always remember the title track just being absolutely freaking gorgeous. This is just such a gorgeous album all around from start to finish. Featuring some of his great compositions. And then, of course, the Cologne concert, which I've wanted forever. She gave me this one as well. Of course, a lot of back history with this album. Almost didn't even happen. Jarrett requested a particular piano for this performance, and I guess there was a little misinterpretation, and they delivered a piano that was out of tune, and they needed to retune it. And there was a lot of just mayhem going on before the show. Just, will he perform? Will he not perform? He almost did not perform. And then it ended up being just this absolute incredible improvised performance by Keith Jarrett. And it went on to become the all-time best-selling solo jazz album of all time. I believe the best-selling jazz album of all time is Kind of Blue by Miles Davis, but this is the best-selling solo album of all time. It's solo jazz album of all time on the ECM label. So double album. Can't wait to listen to this. It's been years since I've heard it. I think the last time I heard it, my brother was playing it years and decades ago. So glad I have this now in the collection. Another one too I've wanted for a long time is original copy of the Dukes of Stratosphear, the 25 O'Clock album. This is the original pressing, basically an EP. Has 6 songs on it, 25 O'Clock, Bike Ride to the Moon, My Love Explodes, What in the World, Your Gold Dress. God, I love Your Gold Dress. What a great track that is. The Mole from the Ministry. So then they came up with the second album, Sonic Sunspot, a couple years later. And then both these albums were released. I think it was called, Fireballs or Chocolate Fireballs from the such and such. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but both those albums are now included on that one compilation. But love this artwork, this kind of like pseudo psychedelic artwork here, and just a great EP. I think along with REM's The Chronic Town EP, I think this is one of the greatest EPs from the 1980s. 25 O'Clock from the Dukes of Stratosphear. A while back, I bought David Bowie. David Bowie's put out a couple of box sets the past few years. One for the Ziggy Stardust album called Rock and Roll Star. I purchased the single album a few months back with highlights from that particular box set. And then I decided to just go ahead and pick up the Hunky Dory box set single album called A Divine Symmetry. This is really cool, featuring early mixes of the Hunky Dory tracks. It pretty much plays just like the album, but different mixes. You know, it starts with Changes and Oh You Pretty Things. And some of these, I gotta say, some of these early mixes I like even better than the official release ones on the Hunky Dory album. Plus, it includes the track Bombers, which first I heard on the original Ryko disc version of Hunky Dory that had several bonus tracks on it. That's a really great track, great outtake. Bombers, the Beulah Brothers, love that mix. Queen Bitch, 8-line poem. It's just, you know, it's not essential, but I do like hearing different remixes of classic tracks, classic albums. So this is basically just like highlights from the Divine Symmetry box set that came out years back. And yeah, it's not that expensive. I think it's like 15 bucks. And well worth having if you're a Bowie fan. And I love his 70s material, so I had to get this. Another one my sister was getting rid of, and I'm glad to have this in my collection right now, is the second Sandy Denny solo album, just called Sandy. Can't wait to play this. She does a version of Tomorrow Is a Long Time by Bob Dylan. Some of her old pals from Fairport Convention are on here, like Richard Thompson. Just, I'm just, you know, Sandy Denny at her early solo prime period. Fantastic stuff. Going to dig into this week. Second album by Sandy Denny. Another one, too, that I've wanted for a long time. I was at Amoeba Records a while back, and I picked this up, and this is Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace album, the double album. Recorded with the James Cleveland and the Southern California Community Choir. This one, I haven't even opened this yet. Can't wait to listen to this. This is one of those albums I've heard about for years. A lot of raves. It's considered one of her best albums. I mainly just her 60s stuff, like Aretha Now and Lady Blue, and I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. So I'm really looking forward to hearing her gospel roots here in this album. Good stuff. It's even on white vinyl, not that it matters, but that's kind of cool as well. But my favorite find here in the past couple months, on record store day, I drove 40 miles away to a record store in Ventura, waited in line for an hour with a friend to find that this album was completely gone. They only had 2 copies left. But I eventually immediately went online, and I found a place in Britain online that had this in stock. And I'm so glad I have this album featuring 2 of my favorite bands of all time. This is the Byrds Buffalo Springfield complete set list at the Monterey Pop Festival in '67. So I've heard most of the Byrds set list on different bootlegs. I have the Monterey Pop box set, but it wasn't the complete set list. So this one here has a few notable entries that I never even knew that they played at the Monterey Pop Festival. One being I Know My Rider, which is a traditional folk song that the Byrds did after they recorded 5D. They did a couple of tracks, and it's really too bad that I Know My Rider and the track Psychodrama City were never featured on 5D, but they were recorded after those sessions. They would have been great additions to 5D. And I think if they had taken a few tracks off of 5D, like Hey Joe and maybe Captain Soul, and thrown in like Psychodrama City and I Know My Rider, I think that album would have just been absolutely one of the greatest albums of the 60s. But back to this album, it's not an incredible performance by the Byrds, but I mean, how many like stellar sounding Byrds recordings are there from this period? Really, hardly any. And it's great to hear like the original quartet, without Gene Clark, of course, play these songs. So you've got, it starts off with a Mike Bloomfield intro, introducing the band, and they go into Renaissance Fair, and then Have You Seen Her Face, both from the Younger Than Yesterday album. They do a version of Hey Joe, which is actually a way more kick-ass, ballsy version than on 5D. I never really cared, though, for the Byrds' Hey Joe version, but they do. And then they, of course, you know, the controversial in-between song, excerpts from David Crosby talking about the JFK assassination, and LSD and all that stuff is on here. It's completely uncut. He Was a Friend of Mine, which was off the Turn 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 album. Their recent single, which is I think one of their greatest flop singles, Lady Friend. They do Chimes of Freedom from Mr. Tambourine Man, and then I Know My Rider was a real revelation hearing that version. It's just absolutely cooks. I mean, the original studio version is fast, but this one is almost like in double time. It's incredible. And then it ends with So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. So, I think probably the only criticism I would give to this performance is that Michael Clarke's drumming is a little off. It's a little rushed in parts. But there is something kind of cool about the rough sounding Byrds, not the studio Byrds. And it's just all over this recording, the Byrds in their raw form live. But I got to tell you, the real star of this particular release is Buffalo Springfield. There are a few tracks on here that blew me away. I never knew that they even played these songs because I only heard like maybe 2 or 3 live tracks from this Buffalo Springfield set over the years on bootlegs and radio broadcasts. But here we go. So we've got the Peter York intro, and then we've got For What It's Worth. They do a really cool version of Nowadays Clancy Can't Even Sing. I never even knew they did Hung Upside Down, which would later feature on the album Buffalo Springfield again months later. So a lot of these songs weren't even released yet. Probably one of the highlights, though, on this album is A Child's Claim to Fame. Such a great live rendition. And then they do a track called Nobody's Fool, which was featured on the Buffalo Springfield box set back in I think it was the early 2000s, but a track that Richie Furay sung and wrote and would later feature on the first Poco album, Picking Up the Pieces. But here it's sung by drummer Dewey Martin doing his best Otis Redding impression. I mean, it sounds nothing like the Poco version on Picking Up the Pieces, but it's still really, really intriguing to listen to. It's fantastic. And then the highlight for me, and I didn't even know they did this version, is Pretty Girl Why live on this album here. Here's the set list. And it's a really great rendition. Now, David Crosby is playing with Buffalo Springfield in this set. And he does a great, some just wonderful harmonies throughout this set, and especially on Pretty Girl Why. You can really hear David's voice on those choruses. And I think that's one of the highlights. And one of the surprises for me in this box set is the Pretty Girl Why, which would later appear on Last Time Around, like a year later. So a song that was never even released. And then they close out with Rock and Roll Woman, and they go into Bluebird. And to this day, I've never really heard a great live version of Bluebird. I saw the Buffalo Springfield reunion back in 2011, and they did Bluebird, but they didn't do the introduction. And I think it's just one of those kind of like those, I think Bluebird really is just kind of a studio creation. It's just magical. The studio version with Stephen Stills on acoustic and Neil Young on his fuzzed out guitar. It's really hard to pull that song off live. Some of you may disagree. I understand, but I just love the studio version better. But this album, if you're a Byrds or a Buffalo Springfield fan, I'm sure you probably love both acts. Try to find this online. It is a must for your collection. It's great sound quality. Even comes on colored vinyl. Not that it really matters to me, but it's thick cardboard here, the cover. And it's great to hear these bands kind of in their prime in the live setting, really raw, no studio embellishments or additives, just them in their raw form. So highly recommended if you're a Byrds or Buffalo Springfield fan. Find it online, pick it up, you'll love it. So those are just a few things I've picked up recently and I'm really enjoying. And there's a few I haven't played yet. I can't wait to listen to them. And there you go, folks. Thanks for watching, as always. And if you have any comments, throw them in the comment section, as always. Thanks for watching, and take care. Bye-bye.